Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Howard Nye, and I'm speaking to you today as President of the Royal Aeronautical Society. And I'm honoured to have been invited by the Society's Women in Aviation and Aerospace Committee to chair this year's Amy Johnson Named Lecture. Each Society Named Lecture is held annually to honour the contribution to aerospace, aviation or space of a certain individual, in this case, Amy Johnson. Born in Hull in 1903, Johnson graduated with a BA in economics from the University of Sheffield, then worked in London as a secretary to a solicitor. Introduced to flying as a hobby, in 1929 she gained an aviator's certificate, then a pilot's A licence, both at the London Aeroplane Club. She also became the first British woman to obtain a ground engineer's C licence. Johnson achieved worldwide recognition when, in 1930, she became the first woman to fly solo from England to Australia. Flying her Gypsy Moth GAAH Jason, which you can see today in the London Science Museum, she left Croydon Airport, Surrey, on the 5th of May 1930 and landed at Darwin, Northern Territory on the 24th of May, 11,000 miles away. No radio, no reliable weather information, no GPS, just simple straight-line routes drawn on a basic map, taking her over uncharted land. As a result, she received the Harmon Trophy, as well as the CBE in George V's 1930 birthday honours list. In July 1931, she flew to Tokyo with her mentor and mechanic Jack Humphreys as co-pilot, setting record times to both Moscow and Japan. She also set a solo record from London to Cape Town in 1932. In 1933, she and her husband crossed the Atlantic, and despite crashing in Connecticut, they established another world record, given a ticker tape parade in New York and entertained by the President Roosevelt himself. In 1934, the couple flew the revolutionarily new de Havilland DH-88 Comet in the Britain to Australia McRobertson's Air Race, but had to retire due to engine trouble. In September 1934, Johnson, under her married name of Mollison, became the youngest president of the Women's Engineering Society and was active in the society until her death. Johnson's last major flight took place in 1936 in May, when she regained her England to South Africa record. The same year, she was awarded the Gold Medal of the Royal Aero Club. In 1940, Johnson joined the Air Transport Auxiliary, an organisation set up to ferry planes around the country for the Royal Air Force during the war. On the Sunday, the 5th of January 1941, she left Blackpool to deliver an airspeed Oxford to RAF Kidlington, but went off course in adverse weather conditions and parachuted out of the plane, losing her life in the sea. The Amy Johnson Named Lecture was inaugurated in 2011 to celebrate both the century of women in flight and to honour Britain's most famous and inspirational woman aviator. The lecture is held annually on or close to the 6th of July to celebrate the date in 1929 when Amy Johnson was awarded her pilot's licence. So that gives you the background to the Amy Johnson Lecture, and we're very pleased to welcome today our speaker, Air Commodore Soraya Marshall, Commandant at the Royal Air Force College, Cranwell. Air Commodore Marshall joined the Royal Air Force as a navigator in 1994. She completed 3 tours on the Tornado F3, qualifying as a weapons instructor, participating in numerous Middle-East operational deployments, and conducting quick reaction alert in the UK and in the Falkland Islands. She was officer commanding of number 92 and number 55 Squadron, and deputy commander of the Intelligence, Surveillance, Target Acquisition and Reconnaissance Force. She was Director of Coalition Air Operations in the Middle East in 2019 and has served as military assistant to Vice Chief of Defence. A graduate of Higher Command and Staff course, she holds a master's degree in Defence Studies. Now, before we ask Air Commodore Marshall to begin her talk, I would just like to remind our audience that you're all free to submit questions through the online chat function, which you can see up on the right-hand side of your screen. The questions will then be selected during the Q&A session by our chair of the Q&A session, Sarah Minette. Sarah Minette is the Managing Director of Mission Systems at Collins Aerospace UK and a Society Fellow with over 25 years experience in the aviation and aerospace sector. Sarah is passionate about encouraging women to enter the industry and to develop their careers, and since January 2017 has been the chair of the Society Women in Aviation and Aerospace Committee, the focus of which is essentially to inspire more women to join our industry and to join the Society, support women currently in or hoping to join or hoping to return to the industry, and to celebrate the achievements of women in our industry in general. So after the Q&A session, Sarah will provide a short overview of a system called ALTA, which is an online mentoring platform used to support women in the industry. So now, without more ado, we can come straight back to our invited speaker, and I will now hand over to you, Air Commodore Marshall. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Howard, thank you very much, and thank you for that very, very kind introduction. It is an absolute privilege to be here today giving this fantastic named lecture of Amy Johnson, and following in the footsteps of some very distinguished previous speakers over the last decade. And as we've heard, Amy Johnson herself, I mean, what an absolute pioneer and trailblazer she was in aviation, engineering and adventure. I think a role model to us all. We heard her story actually in preparation for this lecture. I was doing a little bit of research into her, and and a lot seemed to resonate. I was born in Yorkshire too. I went to university, I studied law. I didn't discover aviation until I was at university, so much later. And I joined the Air Force, and I'm, flew jets, and I'm now, the most senior aviator in the Royal Air, female aviator in the Royal Air Force. And I was feeling pretty good about myself for a moment. And then I thought, hang on a minute, she was born in 1903, 120 years ago almost. And so what she achieved and the hurdles that she overcome are really quite incredible. And anything I've achieved, I think, pale into insignificance in comparison. But it also made me reflect that she died in the early 1940s, and it took another 50 years for the Air Force to change its policy and allow women to fly in support and then combat roles. And it's taken a further 30 years for somebody, me, to get to the rank of 1 star. And actually, I realised we perhaps have not come as far or as fast as we should have done. So in my current role as Commandant Royal Air Force College Cranwell, my mission is to inspire, train and develop the next generation Air Force. And I think Amy Johnson makes me determined to do better. And I think as a service, we absolutely have to do better. Not only do we need to reflect better the society that we defend, so the sort of moral obligation to be more diverse, but it's also absolutely mission critical. We have to do things differently. Otherwise, we will be overtaken by threats and our adversaries. And on a personal level as well, I think, as a mother of a daughter, I don't want her potential to be limited by obstacles, by barriers, or by stereotypes. And so I think it's really important that we use, the spirit of Amy Johnson to inspire the current and next generation of women to really push those barriers and to release their full potential. So what I'm going to talk to you about today for the next sort of 25 minutes or so is the next generation Air Force through the lens of people. So how we as a service are transforming and modernising our approach to careers. And then I'll look at what that means for leadership. So what does leadership or good leadership look like in the next generation Air Force, and how are we preparing the new officers joining for the challenges that undoubtedly lie ahead? And then I'll finish up with some personal reflections on how I have dealt with working in a male-dominated environment where there is a lack of female representation, and what I've learnt along the way and what I think is important for the future. So the next generation Royal Air Force, or ASTRA, you've probably heard that strapline and that tagline used quite a lot. The RAF strategy is to succeed on operations, focus on our people, and build the next generation RAF. Why? Because we find ourselves in an increasingly complex, competed and contested environment across all domains. So all of the traditional domains, but you can add space and cyber into that as well. And that context means that we have to demand more from our people. The RAF needs to be at the very needs to be at the very leading edge of everything that it does. It needs to be forward-looking. We need to embrace new technology and drive new technology, and we need to do it faster than our adversaries. The Chief of the Air Staff's vision for the Royal Air Force is that it is in the top tier of the most technologically innovative, productive and lethal air forces in the world. And in order to achieve this, people are absolutely vital. We need to recruit, train and retain the right people. And those need to be the brightest and the best from across the entirety of our society. And to do that and to be successful in that task, we need to transform as an organisation. And that is what Astra is. It is our journey as a service to the Air Force of 2040. Only we can't wait until 2040. We've got to do it right now. We've got to get the right people with the right mindset. And so consequently, we are changing, radically changing what careers look like and how we approach career management. We also recognise that society is producing a very different type of person these days, Generation Z. They are different. You know, the education system is different. They have different values, different aspirations, different expectations. And we need to understand that and be able to accommodate it. Not only that, but even the people serving, you know, we understand and recognise that as you go through different phases in your life, your aspirations and expectations change, whether you're young, free and single and wanting to volunteer for every deployment under the sun, or whether you have a family, or perhaps a period of time where your partner's career becomes more important and you have to take the back seat, or perhaps you're caring for elderly parents. You know, your aspirations and expectations and what you can achieve will change during different phases of your life. And if we want to retain the talent that we have invested so much in and trained really well and retain that expertise, we need to be able to accommodate all of that. And if I look at my own experience as well, many of the women I joined the service with, you know, ended up leaving in their early 30s, probably around the time that they had a family. And of course, from a business perspective, that's a huge loss of investment and expertise. And if we're able to change it and keep them and retain all of that within the service, then there is absolute benefit, hopefully for the individual, but definitely for the organisation. So the sorts of changes that the Air Force are bringing into place in terms of career management are as follows. First of all, at the minute, we're changing from branches and trades into professions. So we currently have about, I think, in excess of 60 different branches and trades. So people join, they join a trade or a branch, and they generally become sort of fairly narrow in their career. And of course, that doesn't always work. Again, you know, when you're young and you don't mind deploying all the time, maybe it does, but perhaps at a different phase in your life, you want to be doing a slightly different role. And so by changing all of those branches and trades into 11 professions, it offers the opportunity for people to broaden their horizons, to maybe try something else, step away, gain some new skills without a detrimental impact on their career. So the move to these 11 bigger, broader professions, I think, provides organisational agility as well as individual flexibility. Flexible working. Now, flexible working we've had in the Air Force for a while, but I have to say, culturally, it's been a bit of a challenge. I think the military culture is definitely one, or has been in the past, of, you know, we come to work, we work long hours, you know, there might be a bit of FaceTime in there and everything else. And I think there's always a sense that if somebody is working from home or flexible working, then they're skiving and they're not really playing their part. In that regard, COVID has been a complete game changer. I think it's been an enormous catalyst. It has sort of broken that cultural attachment we seem to have to long hours in the office, and proved that we can work highly effectively from home when we need to. And I think it's almost, you know, we've leapfrogged about 10 years forward in terms of flexible working. Now, clearly flexible working doesn't work for every single person in every single squadron and environment, but where it is possible, we are absolutely embracing it, which I think is a really good move forward. The other thing we're doing is this concept of zigzag careers. This enables people to move seamlessly at different phases in their life when they need to, between regular service, between reservist service, perhaps stepping out into industry as well, or into Civvy Street and then back in again. So that is, I think, a really, really important factor. And a huge benefit to the organisation as well. So not only does it give people flexibility to manage their lives appropriately, but we benefit because the sorts of skills that people get when they go out into industry and into other walks of life, they can bring back and that into the service and add value. And I currently have two incredibly talented women work for me. They're at a phase of their life where they've got young children, and so the posting cycle of every 2 to 3 years just didn't work. And they've gone into reservist jobs, promoted into reservist jobs, where they're doing a fantastic job, and they'll stay for 5, 6, 7 years until a time where they may want to step back into regular service, and they'll be able to compete for promotion on a level playing field with their regular peers, which is fantastic news. Of course, increased diversity and inclusion is absolutely paramount, and the service, the chief is absolutely adamant that we must do better in this regard. We've got very stiff recruitment targets, but we also need to retain. We recognise that women and those from ethnic minorities serve, on average, a shorter period of time than their male white counterparts. And so trying to understand what those barriers are and removing them to try and retain for as long as we can in the service, again, is really, really important. And also, there does come a time when people will leave the service, but we want people to leave as advocates. We want them to have had a good time, a good career, choices, opportunities, and then advocate for the service sort of on our behalf to enable us to recruit high caliber individuals after they've gone. Finally, we're modernising and improving our training systems drastically. So we'll train people faster, we're modularising it, we are using technology to enhance the way that we learn, synthetics, virtual learning environments, etc. And we're also accrediting the training that we deliver, as much as we can. Again, to sort of support that idea of zigzag careers, so people can gain qualifications in the service that are recognisable in the civilian world as well. And of course, increasing lateral entry is another thing that we really want to be able to do. I think trying to increase diversity and inclusion in a hierarchical, bottom-fed organisation is a significant challenge and will take a period of time. But certainly as we move into things like space and cyber, then being able to bring people in at higher levels and using this modular online training system and accreditation to understand what they've done, what qualifications they've got, and recognising it within the military system will really, really help that. We take lateral entry in at the moment at the senior NCO or non-commissioned officer level, but there is absolutely aspirations to expand that, throughout the full rank range. So those are the sorts of things that we're doing to really modernise careers, the direction of travel of careers in the next generation Air Force. And I personally think that all of those collectively will have a significant impact. And I think if they were in place 10 or 15 years ago, I hazard a guess that many of my female colleagues who did end up leaving, unable to sort of balance the pressures of the military career with family life potentially, would probably still be in serving alongside me. So I'm genuinely excited about the future, and I think there's much to look forward to in terms of the way careers are going in the Royal Air Force. So I've talked a little bit about the direction of careers. Now I'm going to look at leadership and the implications for leaders in that next generation Air Force, because there are significant challenges. And one thing is absolutely certain, is that good leadership is vital if we are to succeed in that next generation journey that we are on. So what does leadership in the next generation Air Force look like? Well, it definitely looks different to what it was when I first joined. When I first joined, I tell the cadets this when they arrive, we were told you need to be a stable extrovert to succeed as an officer and particularly as aircrew in the Royal Air Force. And we were taught to lead in one particular style. It was very masculine, it was very directive, the situation is, the mission is, and so on and so forth. That style of leadership has definitely had its day. If we look at the challenges of the next generation Air Force, if we look at the increasing complexity of the world, of digitization, artificial intelligence, automation, and that more diverse workforce that I've talked about, we need a different style of leader, and we need to prepare our leaders for those challenges more effectively. There's a wonderful writer, Blair Shepherd, who kind of articulates the challenge of that leadership, the future leadership, in his book, 10 Minutes to Midnight. And he sets it out. I'm just going to share them with you because I think it's good sort of food for thought. And he comments that there are 6 paradoxes in good leadership, so a combination of character traits that sort of work in opposition to each other. The first one is the traditional innovator. So being able to innovate, absolutely, innovate, look forward, be different, but also hold on and value, or hold on to what has gone before, the valuable things. You don't want to let those go. The second is the tech-savvy humanist. So technically competent, but they also understand people, and that's vital. The third one is seeing the bigger picture and executing it. So vision is not enough. You've got to have vision, but you've also got to be able to put that into a plan of action and deliver it. The fourth one is a humble hero, courageous but with humility. The fifth one is a high integrity politician. That's politician with a small p. So understand the game, politically savvy, but always with integrity. And the sixth one, the final one, is a globally minded localist. So understand that the bigger problems, the world problems, but be able to start small, using that context, start small, start locally. So quite a significant challenge in terms of the sorts of things we want a leader to be able to do. Last year, we started delivering a brand new officer training course. It was the culmination of about 3 years of work, where we looked at that Air Force of 2040, the next generation Air Force. We looked at what it was, what it would be, and we tried to understand the qualities and characteristics that leaders in that Air Force would need. And we've completely and utterly redesigned our initial officer training, but also our senior NCO training, and also the way in which we deliver command, leadership and management training for all people in the Air Force, non-commissioned officers as well. Really investing in that through life training in leadership is absolutely vital. In the next generation Air Force, leadership at every level is really important. It is not just the preserve and the domain of the senior leaders or the senior officers. Everybody needs to lead at every single level. So we have empowered and capable individuals, and we recognise the talent that we have across the entire rank spectrum. The leadership that we teach is based on our sort of Bible of leadership, which is Air Publication 7001, for any of you who'd like to spot Air Publication numbers, AP 7001, which was rewritten by the TEDA Academy of Leadership last year. And I really, really like it. It's sort of a guide to leadership in today's Royal Air Force and the next generation Air Force. The leadership journey that we take our people through comes in sort of 6 stages. And the first 3 is what we deliver here at Cranwell on officer training, and then the rest they do as they get more senior and progress through the organisation. But the journey starts with know yourself, then lead yourself, then lead small teams, lead change, and then finally lead the organisation. I love that. I think, know yourself and lead yourself. Puts emotional intelligence and self-awareness really at its heart. And in AP 7001, it also links it with our sort of ethos, standards and core values of the Royal Air Force: RISE, respect, integrity, service and excellence. And that's what we've tried to do here as we basically bring in our new officers and train them to be the leaders of the future. What we absolutely impress upon them is the need for diversity in leadership. If you want a diverse organisation that empowers its people, then we need diverse leaders as well. And we have to recognise that effective leadership comes in very many different forms, not just that single, stable, extrovert, sort of masculine, directive style of leader at all. Introverts can be phenomenal leaders and add huge value to an organisation. And so what we've tried to generate is a safe training environment, and we encourage our cadets to experiment with different styles of leadership, understand how they come across, how they the effect and impact that they have on other people, and learn how to veer and haul their leadership styles depending on the situation. Experiment and even fail. It's okay to fail, because actually when we fail, we probably learn more about ourselves, and being able to pick yourself up afterwards, learn from your mistakes and improve is a really, really important part of self-awareness and being a leader. And to deliver that sort of safe environment for experimentation and failure, we've removed much of the assessment as they go through the course, and we've adopted a coaching and mentoring sort of ethos, I suppose, which is absolutely catered for the individual to try and encourage that diversity in leadership. We also have tried to encourage a challenge culture. We want to have thinking leaders who aren't afraid to question, are appropriately, who also set the conditions for that to happen when they have their own teams to lead, so that we are genuinely empowering our people and making sure that everybody's voice and good ideas are heard, because certainly good ideas, again, do not reside only in the senior officers of the Royal Air Force. So absolutely challenge culture, empowering everybody that we have. Ultimately, effective leadership is the ability to get the best out of your team, whatever that team might be, in whatever situation you find yourself in, and whatever the task is at hand, and being able to veer and haul that leadership style accordingly. Without doubt, the hardest thing about leadership is people. Pretty much any job or task, there is a solution out there somewhere, but bringing your team with you, getting them to do perhaps what they don't want to do, is the hardest part of leadership. So that strand of emotional intelligence is really, really key. I also firmly believe that leadership is never something that you completely nail or master. It is something that you should constantly strive to improve and be better at. And again, that's what we encourage our young officers to be. And linking all of those leadership qualities with our ethos, standards, and core values, to me, good leadership is fundamentally about service. It's about serving those who you have the privilege of leading. It's not about personal gain or glory. And so that is how we are, that's the context of how we are teaching leadership in that next generation Air Force. And it is absolutely my hope that these new leaders will grab the challenge ahead of them and start to drive change, from the bottom of the organisation, as well as meeting the senior level intent from the Chief of the Air Staff down. Right, so I've talked about careers in the future and talked about leadership. I'm now going to sort of return to a slightly more female focus and talk about my own personal reflections, sort of my journey throughout my career really in a male-dominated environment. I kind of joined the Air Force in the 1990s, a very, very different Air Force to today. I was in the first sort of handful of women who did that. And certainly throughout much of my career, I've always been the only woman on my squadron. I've commanded almost exclusively men until very recently. And that has definitely come with challenges. So I'm not going to take you through a blow-by-blow account of my career, which would be very boring, but I have sort of distilled it down to a bunch of observations, advice, lessons I've learned that have helped me to succeed, and I'll just run through some of those. First of all, the fear of change is invariably worse than the reality of change. I think that is absolutely true. I mean, when I joined a fast jet squadron, it was a boys' club. They liked it as a boys' club. They didn't want to change. So you had the initial resistance, but then you had acceptance. And in my experience, actually, having a bit more diversity generally improved everything for everybody, sort of genuinely a better culture. And so actually the fear of that change was far, far worse than the reality. I think when you work as a woman in or if you're in a minority working in a majority environment, there is often a pressure to try and conform to that majority, or to start to mimic their behaviours and become more like them. I firmly believe that you don't need to do that. The RAF is a meritocracy. That's my second point. Okay, so you can be yourself and be accepted. What is important in a meritocracy is your professional credibility, being as good as you can be at your job, and that is the route to acceptance and succeeding in an organisation like the Royal Air Force. My third point is maybe a bit contentious. It is be sympathetic to intolerance. Sounds a bit counterintuitive, and I absolutely am not suggesting that you accept any unacceptable behaviours. There is clearly a line, but actually you tend to find very little of that, certainly in today's Royal Air Force. Much of what you come up against is sort of unconscious bias. It's people behaving in a way that is not acceptable, but because they know better. They don't know better, are they? So understand that. Be sympathetic to the fact that they're not trying to offend, perhaps, but they know no better. They do need to be educated, but you can't change the world overnight. And you have to bring your team with you. So you can bang your fist on the table and you can tell them that that's unacceptable. But again, you've got to have a team, you've got to lead them, you've got to bring them with you. So try and be sympathetic to intolerance. My next point is have a thick skin, but be self-aware. This always makes me laugh. I think, some of the adjectives used to describe women, successful women leaders, are pretty hurtful when it comes down to it. We have 180s, we have 360s sort of reporting, which I think are really, really great tools. And there is still a little bit of unconscious bias, some of the microaggressions that exist in an organisation that is not fully diverse. That can only be expected. Things like if you're a man and you're ambitious, that's seen as a good quality to have. But if you are successful and get promoted as a woman and you're called ambitious, it's actually slightly nefarious. If you're a man, you can be authoritative and directive and good in command, whereas a woman, you're seen as bossy or autocratic. These sorts of words do hurt. I don't think they're true. So therefore, having a thick skin, I think, is probably quite important. But also being self-aware, because it's very easy to write those criticisms off to, oh, well, that's just their unconscious bias. But maybe I am a little bit too autocratic. Maybe I do need to change my leadership style to bring my team along with me. So have a thick skin, but be self-aware. My next point is turn negatives into positives. Undoubtedly, everybody will have challenges in their career, but in my experience, even the worst experiences can be turned into an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to do things better. And some of those frustrations and failures can be used to fuel that determination to be better and to do better and to succeed. My next point is lead by example and lead from the front. Okay, be authentic. Be humble, but always treat other people in the way that you would like to be treated yourself. And don't ask others to do what you wouldn't be prepared to do yourself. My next point is that juggling motherhood and a career that you love is possibly the hardest thing that you will ever have to do. You will turn yourself inside out, trying to be the best mum you can be and clinging on to your career by your fingertips. You will have to make really difficult decisions. There is no right way. There is no blueprint of getting it right. It is messy. It is bumpy. You will need a lot of support, and you will probably need to ask for help along the way from friends, from family, from the organisation that you work for. But it's absolutely worth it in the end. And when your 16-year-old son turns around and says, actually, Mummy, I think your job's really quite cool, then it definitely is worth it in the long run. 2 more points. Inner self-belief is really important. I think, when you work in an organisation where you are in the minority, it's very easy to let that weigh down on you. Cultivating an inner self-belief that you absolutely can succeed, that you deserve to be there, that if you can work hard enough, you will succeed. I think if you can do that internally, it's very, very hard for other people to hold you back. My final point is, see it to be it is true, that old adage, absolutely true. And that I've been on a journey in that respect. When I first joined at the Air Force, I was absolutely set on equality. That was the only thing that mattered. Don't mention to me that I'm a woman. I'm just a navigator on a squadron doing my best. I realise now, as I'm a little bit older and quite a lot older and a bit more mellow, that that's a pretty naive position to be in. And actually, I have a responsibility to be a role model, to encourage other people to sort of prove that it is possible. So, and the fact that we don't have very many women at more senior ranks is absolutely does put some people off. So seeing it to be it absolutely is true. So just to close then, I think in reflection, a career in the Royal Air Force for the past 30 years for me has been absolutely amazing. It's been rewarding, it's been challenging, it's been fun, and I genuinely don't believe there are any barriers to women succeeding. And certainly some of the other ones around flexible working, etc., as I've covered, will all be changing and improving as we go forward. But I think I am a little bit disappointed that in those almost 30 years that I've been involved in with the Royal Air Force, the number of women flying in particular has not really increased. We're still at about 2.5 to 3% of female aviators in the Royal Air Force. And I find that really, really disappointing. And again, it's taking too long to get to a position that we need to be in. And there are a number of reasons for that, and I've obviously covered a number of them in my talk. But I think some of it is about societal perceptions. It is still, you think of a pilot, you think of a man. and which underlines to me the absolute importance of things like Youth in STEM, the Air Cadets, the University Air Squadrons, the specialist engagement teams and the ambassadors that we've got, getting into children at an impressionable age and trying to change those societal norms and gender stereotyping. And that is something that we all need to work. It's not just for the Royal Air Force to do, it's the military, it's the industry, it's academia, getting into those organisations and influencing how children see the world. I also think the value of mentoring and networking is absolutely key. I didn't have any mentoring or real sort of network of women that I could talk through going through. And I think I missed out a lot with that. Just the sense that you're not alone. There is no right path, but being able to bounce ideas off, to support, to vent your frustrations, I think is really, really important in helping find your way through. My final point is I went on High Command and Staff course back in 2019, and it's the first course that I was working with a number of women peers, a course of about 30 of us, of which 6 were women from military, from other government departments, and they were amazing women. I have to say, we were all sort of slightly in awe of each other, and we admired each other tremendously. And it was one of the most uplifting experience I've had as a woman in the service. Really support women supporting other women. So my final plea to all of us women out there is let's champion each other. Let's advocate for each other. Let's lift each other up, and let's push each other forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Air Commodore Marshall. Just fascinating insight, and really good to hear about the Next Gen Air Force and how you're challenging that through people. Your insights into what good leadership looks like and how you're driving that through the next generation, and then your personal reflections. And I have to say, I absolutely can identify with a huge amount that you said with regards to your personal reflections. So thank you very much. So I'm going to bring over the Q&A tab. So let's see what questions we have coming through. So I can just see one question. Please keep questions coming through. So the first question for you, Air Commodore Marshall, is what's the RAF doing to encourage female pilots to join?
Right. Okay. So I'm not a recruitment expert, but I do know actually that this year we've recruited a far higher number of female pilots, which is really great. And I know that recruitment and selection, the department just across the road here at Cranwell, are working very, very hard to do that. And they're trying to take down the barriers where they can. For example, the aptitude testing that we still have. We recognise that men tend to do much better in their aptitude tests than women. So we have rebalanced the weighting that we put on other things like interviews, leadership, the other attributes that are kind of assessed at the selection phase, to make sure that because women tend to perform at the same age better in those areas than their male counterparts, so re-weighting or rebalancing how we assess and therefore accepting more women. So that's one of the things that we're doing. I think that the rest is actually just about, as I said, changing perceptions. It's we have a Youth in STEM programme. We're getting into sort of 9-year-olds to 14-year-olds. We're trying to, not to recruit, absolutely not, but to try and engender a love and fascinations of all things sort of science, technology, and engineering, and aircraft and space and cyber and everything else in between. So really trying to change that sort of societal perspective to make girls and young women believe that this is a career that they absolutely can have. And of course, the sort of seeing it to be it angle is really, really important. The advertising, the advocating, and that's sort of across the board, not just the military, but industry as well.
Thank you very much. So a question that's come in as well is, so as organisations get larger, and I guess particularly with the armed forces, there can be a tendency to for institution to dampen inspiration. So how do you keep this from happening in your part of the RAF?
I think you're right, and to me that is the leadership challenge. And I think in a hierarchical organisation as well, particularly in the military, but any other organisation that is hierarchical, that fact can kind of dampen innovation. And you know, we are really fortunate in the Air Force. We recruit amazingly talented individuals, you know, from every rank, even from, you know, the lowest rank. You know, RAF Halton and our recruit training sort of falls under my command as well. And I'm always blown away by the caliber of individual coming in, not as an officer, but as a recruit. You know, they've got degrees, they are so articulate, they're well spoken, you know, they are a talented bunch of people. And being a technological service, you would absolutely expect that. That is why we put so much importance on really empowering our people, valuing them, creating that kind of culture and environment where even the most junior person can speak up, because absolutely, you know, the bright and the best ideas can often come from unexpected places. So to me, it's about that kind of command culture that we engender and develop in the Royal Air Force.
Okay, thank you. So another question has come in. If the RAF are only recruiting the best, why is there an age limit cap? I certainly wasn't the best person at a young age of 25, whereas now at 33, I have some very big achievements that I'm proud of, but yet too old to apply. I find that disappointing.
Yes, I would agree. And I think we are removing a lot of those age barriers. Again, this is not, you know, I'm not a policy person, I'm not a recruitment expert, but I do know that I've had a lady in her late 40s coming through training. So we are removing many of those barriers. We absolutely, it is the right thing to do. We should do it, and it is recognizing that, you know, talent doesn't stop. You know, when you don't stop learning and being, you know, very effective just because you've got over the age of 30, God forbid. So we are removing a lot of those barriers. There is, I think, some of them still do stay in because there is a return of service. You know, the cost of our training is huge. So we want to make sure that we get, you know, a good return in service, but we are challenging all of those old sort of conditions that we used to have, I think.
Good, that's good to hear. Okay, another question. What has been your biggest challenge working in a male-dominated environment, and how did you overcome these challenges?
Biggest challenge? I genuinely, I can't think of a single biggest challenge. I think, you know, as I sort of said, you know, in my reflection part, you know, the Air Force is a meritocracy, and I think, you know, as soon as you've sort of established yourself and your professional credibility, you are accepted, and almost, you know, it doesn't really matter. Your gender really becomes an irrelevance, and to me, that's what true equality is. You know, you are valued for what you provide and for the job that you do and the person that you are. It's nothing to do with what you look like or what gender you are or anything else. It's irrelevant. So that's kind of where we should be heading towards. I think, you know, there are definitely times where I was a little bit lonely. I think, you know, when I first joined, you know, an organisation of all men, you know, many of whom were older than me, it takes time to establish friendships and you know, and I've got some amazing friends, you know, from every tour that I've done. But I can't actually think of, you know, any single significant challenge. So I'm sorry, that's not a very good answer.
It's a journey, isn't it? I think, and probably every situation brings different challenges and different rewards.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've always sort of met those sorts of challenge. You know, I'm pretty sort of stubborn. So if someone tells me I can't do it, I sort of like to prove them wrong. So I see those hurdles as challenges to be beaten, I think, more than anything else.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, another question. How does the RAF handle the issue of two serving members in the same family? What rules are in place if both are required to deploy at the same time? Does the RAF have a requirement for the members to plan for children, childcare, etc.?
Well, so I mean, I've lived this journey. My husband is in the Air Force as well, and you know that trying to juggle a career and motherhood is really hard. You overlay the military posting cycle and two serving. You know, it is genuinely tough, and I think a lot of the heartache that we've had as a family over the years has come from that. I think the Air Force is getting so much better at this all the time. They absolutely recognise those challenges. There are a whole host of preferential treatments that you can apply for to stop one of you from going to give yourself co-location. And most of the measures that I sort of talked about in the first part of my talk, in terms of the flexibility in careers that you have, the ability to switch and veer and haul, between regular reserve, taking sabbaticals, working remotely. I mean, I know of people who have been posted, part of the couple has been posted to America. They've gone, but carried on doing their job, remotely from overseas. I mean, that was unheard of, 10, 15 years ago, but it's happening now. I'm not saying that we've got it perfect, but there is an appetite to address all of these sorts of barriers where we can. I mean, clearly there's a service need, there is an operational output that we have to deliver. At the end of the day, that comes first. But I think, the Air Force is making huge strides in trying to accommodate those challenges that everybody has as we sort of go through life.
Okay, thank you. Given how the empowerment and diversity has gained, albeit not a significant amount over the last 120 years, what would you deem to be a step leap in the correct direction with your influence on the leaders, officers of the future? Simply a greater presence of females and minorities in the RAF, or more of a change in mindset to extend the time served by these minorities?
I think it's everything. As I said, before, it's about recruitment, it's about retention, and it's about then making sure people leave having had a really fulfilling career. I think, yes, seeing it to be it. I think there are undoubtedly people that look at any organisation that is still predominantly led by men. Women will find that off-putting. If they're predominantly white, if they're then people from ethnic minorities will find that off-putting. They can't see themselves in an organisation that looks like that. So we absolutely have to change, and we are changing. I mean, some of our branches are and trades are almost 50%, but we need to work that all the way through into the higher echelons of an organisation. And this is one of the chief's highest priorities. And actually, a lot of traditionally the Air Force has been run by aircrew, by pilots. That is not the case now. Stations are commanded by non-aircrew. Jobs at the top of the shop are being made available to people without a brevet. This is in order to try and value people for the contribution that they make rather than what's on the brevet that's on their chest, but also to improve diversity. So that is a really, really important part of the journey. But then we've also got to retain the talent. We invest a huge amount into the people that we train, of money, and they say, people do stay in the service in the RAF for a long period of time. I think it's about 12 to 14 years is the average service, which is tremendous compared to other organisations and the other services. But we could do better than that. Why if they can stay for 12 or 14, why can't they stay for 20? And often it's trying to identify why people are leaving and then trying to put in place the corrections and remove those barriers. And that is the journey that the Air Force is on.
Okay, so a question here about someone wanting to pursue a career. So my question for you is, what advice, if any, would you give to someone pursuing a career as an officer in the Royal Air Force that you wish you had been given when you started your journey?
These questions are really hard to answer. I think just go for it. Enjoy. I think rise to the challenge yourself to be the best you possibly can be, and stay stay inquisitive. The Air Force is a great place to learn and keep developing and to learn new skills and try different things. So embrace that journey, keep an open mind, be inquisitive, and challenge yourself to, put yourself out of your comfort zone, try things that you think you might not like, because you probably will enjoy it and you'll probably gain from it as a person. So just, embrace the challenge and embrace the journey.
Okay, and then I think we've got time for just 2 more questions. So this is for someone who's really at the earliest stage of her career. So do you have any advice for a young woman waiting for her A-level results to apply for the RAF?
No, put your application in, come on.
Just do it.
Yeah, just do it, absolutely. I mean, you don't need to wait for your results, do you? I'm sure you've done very well in your A-levels. Just do it. Obviously we've got all of the recruitment and selection, empire just over the road. Put your application in. It will take a period of time for that to be processed, and results are obviously coming out, just in August. So, get after it right now, and try, because actually recruitment, with COVID, civilian recruitment is quite down. So we are, very fortunate in the service to be getting lots and lots of applications. So there is a period of time that it takes to sort of process all of that. So get on with it and put your application in.
Thank you. And last question, what are the key things that men can do to support equality and encouraging women in STEM industries?
So, much of what I've talked about, I mean, I'm obviously focused on women in terms of advocating, in terms of networking, in terms of mentoring, but they apply equally to men. Men can advocate and should advocate for women. They should champion women. They should mentor them. They should help network. They should try and understand the sorts of challenges that women face in those organisations. A lot of unconscious bias is about just not being able to sort of see what it's like in somebody else's shoes. So to men, put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Take the time to have those conversations, to understand what the hurdles are, because that's a really, really important part of then putting things right and making a contribution.
Great, thank you. Well, I think there were lots more questions coming in, but that's all we have time for. So thank you very much, Air Commodore Marshall. It's been great, and I just wish we had more time, so maybe we'll try and figure out another way of answering some of these questions. But thank you very much for your time. So I'm going to move on, and if I could have my altar slide shared, please. Okay, so what I wanted to share with you all today was some information about our mentoring scheme called ALTA. And as you've heard over the last hour, it is so important that women support each other. And what ALTA brings, it's an online mentoring tool that's designed by women for women in our aviation and aerospace industry. It's free to all females in the industry. And it was developed because research by UWE, the University of West of England, highlighted that we have this leaky pipe. And again, the Air Commodore highlighted that this is one of the challenges in the RAF as well, is we have women joining our industries or the RAF or the armed forces, and then they leave because they don't necessarily have mentors or role models or networks. So ALTA was developed by Little Blue Jets, UWE, Airbus, the Royal Air Force and the Royal Aeronautical Society. And as I say, it's this online mentoring scheme that is open to everyone, every female. We've had huge success. We have, I think, over 400 signed up to the platform at the moment. We can not just limited to the UK. If you're overseas, it's fine. You're able to join too. And we encourage you to sign up not only to be a mentee, but also to be a mentor. You don't have to be the most senior person in a huge organisation to be a mentor. We really are seeking mentors from across a lot of different levels in organisations, because everyone has something to give to help women in their careers. Whilst it is free to everyone to join, we do need support, and we do have a number of supporters that are shown on the slide that help with small donations each year to enable the ALTA mentoring platform to develop. not only is it a matched mentoring scheme, but we also hold a number of networking events and specialist briefing sessions. So it really is an opportunity to build your contacts and to learn, and to learn from others and to give back to others in the industry. So please sign up. You can go to Alta on pld.com, or if you go onto the Royal Aeronautical's website and look out for the Women in Aviation and Aerospace Committee, that page, you'll find the links there. And yeah, we really do encourage you to sign up. The more people that go onto it, sign up to be mentors and mentees, the more it will continue to grow and help more women in our industry. So thank you for listening about that, and yeah, please sign up. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hand back over to Howard. So over to you, Howard.
Thank you very much, Sarah. First of all, I'm here now to give a vote of thanks. So the first thing I want to do is to, excuse me, I would first wish to thank the Society Women in Aviation Aerospace Committee. This is particularly you, Sarah, you're the committee chair, for organising this 2021 Amy Johnson Name Lecture, and of course for allowing us to participate online. I think it's disappointing on one side not to be able to see everyone in person, but actually it's good that we can attract a very good audience that we've done today, and to be able to share such knowledge and information online in the way we're doing it. So thank you very much for organising this. We're also very keenly aware of the dedication and continuous engagement of all the members of this particular committee, like other committees in the Society, in contributing to the Society's vision, particularly to encourage and support, in this case, women in the aerospace and aviation, and even the space sector, which we haven't talked about on this occasion, because I come from the space sector myself. But our main vote of thanks this afternoon goes to Air Commodore Marshall, Commandant at the Royal Air Force College, Cranwell. I think we sincerely thank you, Air Commodore, for taking the time to share your very interesting insights into the future direction of careers in the RAF. The positive messages which you passed today, that the RAF has gone through a number of changes to ensure that women are encouraged to try and maintain positions, to respect their views, and effectively to ask the whole of the Air Force to take on what are the combined and communicative issues are in hand. So also issues about how leadership should be managed and how to succeed in an environment where there's a lack of female representation. So thank you very much for this very interesting insight. And clearly this is a challenge which is going forward. We haven't solved this today, but I think it's something that's very interesting going forward. And we have to, certainly the Society is in great support of all these actions which are doing this sort of work. Last but not least, I'd like to thank our online audience. We had an audience of around, let me just see, almost 200 today. Participating in this name lecture. We thank you for your continuing support in particular to the Women in Aviation and Aerospace Committee events, and to the Society in general. So we'd like to look forward to inviting you to other related events in the months ahead. Please keep your eyes on the Society website, where you can see all the events which are coming up. And so as I draw this event to a close a little bit 2 minutes ahead of time, I once again thank you very much, Air Commodore, for your very interesting discussion. Thank you, Sarah, for doing what you've done for all of us, and all of the executive team, of course. And I wish you all a very good afternoon. Good afternoon.